Terry A. Davis, from Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia at en.wikipedia.org. This reading is from how this article appears as of April 19th, 2025. It is currently listed as a good article, and the assessment was made on March 8th, 2025. For other people named Terry Davis, see Terry Davis, disambiguation. The info box header reads, Terry A. Davis. There is an image, and the alt caption reads, an older man with full gray hair is in front of a grassy background adjacent to a parking lot, looking at the camera with a blank expression. He is wearing a blue knitted sweater. The caption reads, Davis in June 2018. Born, Terrence Andrew Davis, December 15th, 1969, West Allis, Wisconsin, U.S. Died, August 11th, 2018, age 48, The Dalles, Oregon, U.S. Education, Arizona State University, BS and MS. Occupations, computer programmer, video blogger. Employer, Ticketmaster, 1990 to 1996. Known for Temple OS. Website, templeos.org. Terrence Andrew Davis, December 15th, 1969 to August 11th, 2018, was an American electrical engineer and computer programmer best known for creating and designing Temple OS, an operating system in the public domain, by himself. As a teenager, Davis learned assembly language on a Commodore 64. He later earned both a bachelor's degree in computer engineering and a master's degree in electrical engineering from Arizona State University. He worked for several years at Ticketmaster on fax machines. In 1966, he began experiencing regular manic episodes, one of which led him to hospitalization. Initially diagnosed with bipolar disorder, he was later declared to have schizophrenia. He subsequently collected disability payments and resided in Las Vegas with his parents until 2017. Growing up Catholic, Davis was an atheist for some of his adult life. After experiencing a self-described quote-unquote revelation, he proclaimed that he had been in direct communication with God and that God had commanded him to build a successor to the Second Temple. He then committed a decade to creating an operating system modeled after the DOS-based interfaces of his youth. In 2013, Davis announced that he had completed the project, now called quote-unquote Temple OS. The operating system was generally regarded as a hobby system, not suitable for general use. Davis amassed an online following and regularly posted video blogs to social media. Although he remained lucid when discussing computer-related subjects, his communication skills were significantly affected by his schizophrenia. He was controversial for his regular use of slurs, which he explained was his way of combating factors of psychological warfare. After 2017, he struggled with periods of homelessness and incarceration. His fans tried to support him by bringing him supplies, but Davis refused their offers. On August 11, 2018, he was struck by a train and died at the age of 48. Early life and career. There are two images. The first one on the left has the alt caption that reads, From left to right stands an elderly woman with short black hair and glasses in a red dress. An early middle-aged man with long hair and a maroon-colored academic dress. And an elderly man with short gray hair and a gray suit and glasses. All three are smiling. The below caption reads, Davis with his parents. The second image on the right also has the alt caption, a young adult with black hair, a blue dress shirt, jeans, and sneakers, smiles while holding a Commodore computer monitor slightly above the ground. He is in an office room in front of a wooden desk. The caption reads, Davis in the 1980s. Davis was born in West Allis, Wisconsin on December 15, 1969, as the seventh of 8 children. His father was an industrial engineer. The family moved to Washington, Michigan, California, and Arizona. Note A. The journalists covering Davis do not give the names of his family members. End note. As a child, Davis used an Apple II at his elementary school. later learning assembly language on a Commodore 64 as a teenager. Davis grew up Catholic. In 1994, he earned a master's degree in electrical engineering from Arizona State University. On the subject of his certifications, he wrote in 2011, quote, "Everybody knows electrical is higher in the engineering pecking order than computer systems, because it requires real math." For several years, he worked at Ticketmaster on fax machines. Onset of mental illness and spiritual awakening. See also, religion and schizophrenia. Davis became an atheist and described himself as a scientific materialist until experiencing what he called a, quote, revelation from God. Starting in 1966, Davis was admitted to a psychiatric ward around every 6 months for reoccurring manic episodes, which began in March. He also developed beliefs centering around space aliens and government agents. According to Davis, he attributed a profound quality to the Rage Against the Machine lyric, quote, "Some of those that work forces are the same that burn crosses," and recalled, quote, "I started seeing people following me around in suits and stuff. It just seemed something strange." He donated large sums of money to charity organizations, something that he had never done before. Later, he surmised, quote, "That act probably caused God to reveal himself to me and saved me." Due to fear of the figures he believed were following him, Davis drove hundreds of miles south with no destination. After becoming convinced that his car radio was communicating with him, he dismantled his vehicle to search for tracking devices he believed were hidden in it, and threw his keys into the desert. He walked along the side of the highway, where he was then picked up by a police officer who escorted him to the passenger seat. Davis escaped from the patrol vehicle and was hospitalized due to a broken collarbone. Distressed about a conversation in the hospital over artifacts found in his X-ray scans, interpreted by him as, quote, alien artifacts, he ran from the hospital. He attempted to carjack a nearby truck before being arrested. In jail, he stripped himself, broke his glasses, and jammed the frames into a nearby electrical outlet, trying to open his cell door by switching the breaker. This failed, as he had been wearing non-conductive frames. He was admitted to a mental hospital for 2 weeks. Between 2003 and 2014, Davis had not been hospitalized for any mental illness-related incidents. In an interview, he said that he had been, quote, "generally pretty crazy in a way. Now I'm not. I'm crazy in a different way, maybe." Davis acknowledged that the sequence of events leading to his spiritual awakening might give the impression of mental illness, as opposed to a divine revelation. He said, quote, "I'm not especially proud of the logic and thinking. It looks very young and childish and pathetic. In the Bible it says if you seek God, he will be found of you. I was really seeking, and I was looking everywhere to see what he might be saying to me." Davis was initially diagnosed with bipolar disorder and later declared to have schizophrenia. He felt, quote, "guilty for being such a technology advocate atheist, and tried to follow Jesus by giving away all of his possessions and living a nomadic lifestyle." In July 1996, he returned to Arizona and started formulating plans for a new business. He designed a 3-axis milling machine, as he recalled having 3D printing in mind as an obvious pursuit, but a Dremel tool incident nearly set his apartment on fire, prompting him to abandon the idea. He subsequently lived with his parents in Las Vegas and collected Social Security disability payments. He attempted to write a sequel to George Orwell's 1984, but he never finished it. Davis later wrote that he found work at a company named, quote, Scitech Corp. Between 1997 and 1999, making FPGA-based image processing equipment. He said the next 2 years were spent at HARE, where he wrote an application called SimStructure, and the 2 years after that were spent at Graphic Technologies, where he was, quote, head software/electrical engineer. After 2003, Davis's hospitalizations became less frequent. His schizophrenia still affected his communication skills, and his online comments were usually incomprehensible, but he was always reported as, quote, always lucid if the topic was about computers. Vice noted that, in 2012, he had a productive conversation with the contributors at Metafilter, where his work was introduced as, quote, an operating system written by a schizophrenic programmer. Temple OS. Main article, Temple OS. There are two images here. The first image has the alt caption, "A software interface is shown with a bold blue and white color scheme. At the top bar resides the date, frames per second, memory, and CPU information, while the open window displays information on how to run and control programs, and information about the operating system. Illustrated icons for packaged video games are also displayed." The caption reads, "A screenshot of the Temple OS interface." The second image has the alt caption, "A middle-aged man with short black hair in a dress shirt looks at the camera." In the background, a dresser and a mirror are displayed. The caption reads, "Davis in 2000." Temple OS is a biblical-themed operating system designed to be the third temple prophesied in the Bible. Known as J Operating System from 2004 to 2005, Lusthos from 2006 to 2012, and Sparrow OS in late 2012. Temple OS is similar to the Commodore 64, DeskView, and other early DOS-based interfaces, and was written in a programming language developed by Davis called Holy C, which was a middle ground between C and C++. Described as being more flexible than C, Holy C was conceived of by Davis in the early 2000s and developed alone over the course of a decade. Temple OS included the design of its original programming language, editor, compiler, and kernel, and it ultimately had over 120,000 lines of code. In 2005, Davis stated that his ambition for the J operating system was to recapture the rapidly changing environment of the Commodore 64 era, as well as encouraging the creation of, quote, oddball software. He envisioned the system as a Commodore 64 with greater processing speed. In 2008, he wrote that Temple OS was primarily intended to create video games, and that it had no internet functionality, claiming that doing so would be the same as reinventing the wheel. Davis proclaimed that he was in direct communication with God, who told him to build a successor to the Second Temple as an operating system. As such, references to biblical tropes are ubiquitous in the OS. One bundled program, quote, After Egypt, is a game in which the player travels to a burning bush to use a, quote, high-speed stopwatch. The stopwatch is meant to act as an oracle that generates pseudo-random text, something Davis believed to be coded messages from God. He likened the process to a Ouija board and speaking in tongues. As an example, quote, among consigned penally result perverseness, checked, stated, held, sensation, reasonings, skies, adversity, Dakota, lip, suffer, approached, enact, displacing, feast, canst, pearl, doing alms, comprehendeth not. Quote by After Egypt. According to Davis, many of the system's features, such as its 640 by 480 resolution and 16 color display, were also explicit instructions from God. The charter on his website stated that Temple OS was God's official temple and a place where offerings are made and God's oracle could be consulted, like Solomon's temple. He used the oracle to ask God about war, quote, servicemen competing, death, quote, awful, dinosaurs, quote, brontosaurus feet hurt when stepped, favorite video game, Donkey Kong, favorite car, BMW, favorite national anthem, Latvia's, favorite band, The Beatles, and the 11th commandment, thou shalt not litter. Davis stated that the operating system was downloaded 10,000 times between 2009 and 2012. Later that year, he renamed the operating system to, quote, Sparrow OS, then to, quote, Temple OS the following year. A few weeks later, his website announced, quote, God's temple is finished. Now, God kills CIA until it spreads. Recognition, criticism, and following. There's a quote block here that says, What people are going to read is, quote, "It's about a pathetic schizophrenic who made a crappy operating system. My perspective is, quote, God said I made his temple." Terry A. Davis in regard to an article about his life from an email to a Vice journalist. Once Temple OS was completed, most of Davis' time was spent browsing the internet, coding, or using the results of the National Institute of Standards and Technology's randomness beacon to further his relationship with God, and he drew fans following his various online activities. He posted video blogs and would refer to himself as, quote, "the smartest programmer that's ever lived," while showing his creations. His YouTube channels were repeatedly terminated due to his vulgarities. In 2017, the OS was shown as a part of an outsider art exhibit in Béarn, France. Davis said he was happy to receive the attention, but was disappointed that few of his fans had used the OS to speak to God. Davis would frequently communicate in randomly generated blocks of text and off-topic declarations about God, which led to bans from websites including Something Awful, Reddit, and Hacker News. However, the critical reception to Temple OS was mostly favorable, as tech journalist David Cassell wrote, quote, "Programming websites tried to find the necessary patience and understanding to accommodate Davis. Tech Republic and OS News published positive articles on Davis' work, even though he had been banned from OS News for hostile comments targeting its readers and staff." In September 2018, OS News editor Tom Halwerda wrote, quote, "Davis was clearly a gifted programmer. Writing an entire operating system is no small feat, and it was sad to see him affected by his mental illness." One fan described him as a, quote, "programming legend," while another, a computer engineer, compared the development of Temple OS to a skyscraper built by one person. The engineer had previously spoken to Davis at length and believed that Davis, had it not been for his illness, could have been a, quote, "Steve Jobs" or a, quote, "Steve Wozniak." Quote, "Glowies. See also, list of slang terms for federal agents." Throughout his life, Davis believed that he was under constant persecution from federal agents, particularly those from the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA. He was controversial for his regular use of offensive slurs, including racist and homophobic epithets, and sometimes rebuked his critics as, quote, "CIA niggers." In one widely circulated YouTube video, he claimed that, quote, "the CIA niggers glow in the dark. You can see them if you're driving. You just run them over." Davis would also coin the term, quote, "glowy," which is based on the aforementioned phrase and would later be used by far-right online groups to denote an undercover federal agent or informant. Psychologist Victoria Tischler doubted that Davis's intentions were violent or discriminatory, but, quote, "some of these antisocial behaviors became apparent through his mental illness, which is, quote, something really common to people with severe mental health problems." Such outbursts, along with the operating system's, quote, "amateurish presentation," ultimately caused Temple OS to become a frequent object of derision. Davis addressed concerns about his language on his website, stating that, quote, "when I fight Satan, I use the sharpest knives I can find." Death. There is an image, and the alt caption reads, "The full image of the older man in a knitted sweater displayed in the info box. More of the background is shown, which includes the parking lot, trees, and a prominent concrete statue of two children, with each reading a book." The caption reads, "A homeless Davis in June 2018, 2 months before his death." During his final 2 months, Davis struggled with periods of homelessness and incarceration. He stopped taking medication because he believed that it limited his creativity. Some fans helped him by bringing him supplies, but he refused their housing offers. After living with his sister in Arizona, Davis traveled to California, and in April 2018 he stopped in Portland, Oregon. Police in the city of The Dalles, approximately 90 miles, 140 kilometers, east of Portland, were informed by locals about Davis. no further complaints were received about Davis. In his final video, recorded on a bench at the Dalles Wasco County Library and uploaded hours before his death, he explained that he had removed most of his videos because he did not wish to, quote, litter the internet, and that he had learned how to, quote, purify himself. At the very end, he states, quote, "It's good to be king. Wait, maybe. I think maybe I'm just a little bizarre little person who walks back and forth. Whatever, but..." On the evening of August 11th, 2018, while walking alongside railroad tracks in the Dalles, Davis was struck and killed by a Union Pacific train. Investigators could not determine whether his death was suicide or accidental, although the train engineer believed his death to be a suicide. The police report stated that Davis was walking with his back towards the train and then he turned around before the moment of impact. When the Dalles Chronicle ran a story about an unnamed homeless man who was struck by a train, the newspaper was inundated with phone calls inquiring whether it was Davis, which the paper later confirmed in a follow-up piece. Tributes. As reports of his death surfaced online, he was memorialized by fans in a number of tributes posted to social media. Through the Temple OS website, his family asked people to donate to organizations in support of mental health. In December 2018, Linux.org, an unofficial community for Linux users, was vandalized by a hacker with the reference to his death. In November 2019, Davis was the subject of a 30-minute documentary on BBC Radio 4.